What is up, YouTube? This is EdMagician34, and I have my League Challenge deck from the second half of Texas State Championships. The next day they had a tournament. I completely reimagined what I was doing, and I dropped Metacham, whatever you want to call them, and decided to run Metal instead, partially because it was what I had the cards for. But also, it's a consistent deck, and it's fun, and it works well. This is essentially the Electros deck from back in the day, just with Bronzong instead. Bronzong, for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to overdo this because I've already done a deck like this. But briefly, the deck works around the concept of this guy, this stage 1. Once per turn, this guy can pull a metal energy from your discard pile and put it on one of your Pokemon. So we got 3 of him because we're trying to get 2 up, ideally, but, not necessarily. It doesn't have to be 2, necessarily. But at least 1. We have 3 Bronzors to power that up. And we're running 2 Dialga EX. This guy's our main bruiser. He's got 180, which is always preferable to 170. His first attack can lock out EXs, which is great for setting you up for KOs with full metal impact, although we do have the muscle band to help facilitate that. The other cool thing is his 2 energy retreat means that 2 Bronzongs can power him up if he needs to retreat. Because he does have to discard 2 metal energies for full metal impact, so you can actually get 2 of them going back and forth. You can power one up on the bench with 2 metal links, retreat the active one, bring the new guy in, then you can do his full metal impact the next turn, and so on and so forth, and kind of loop them like that. Retreating's not a bad thing in this deck because it gives us something to use with Bronzong. Now here's part of what makes this deck really work is Aegislash EX. We're running 2 of them. His Slash Blast is 2-hit KO on most everything, usually. But what makes him uniquely useful right now in this meta is Mighty Shield. It blocks things like Plasma Flareon and Seismitoad really, really well because they tend to power up with double colorless energy. And when they don't, that basically means they got to take a 2-turn windup, which is much slower. And that means that gives you plenty of time to go, smash him down with Slash Blast, or you can retreat this guy out. Bring in somebody like Dialga, like let's say on Seismitoad, to keep him from attacking, keep him from quaking, punching you. And then they either have to retreat or face some other kind of thing, like the fact that Aegislash might just knock them out next turn. You can put them in some very unpleasant situations. Not to mention decks that rely on things like Strong Energy also dislike Aegislash, but double colorless energy is pretty crucial right now. And they do have ways around not being able to use double colorless energy. But the fact that this is not something like Enhanced Hammer, it's an ability, really, really thwarts Seismitoad, and he was incredibly prevalent this last weekend. He was very, very common. So Aegislash was an excellent day 2 pick. People were even taking this in decks that were not metal decks. But in a metal deck, obviously, he can get pretty silly. I even built him up one time to where I could actually one-shot a Mega Manectric. That's hitting for 240. So his Slash Blast can be a thing thanks to Bronzong. You can power him up pretty quickly. Now that said, we have even more ways to hose the meta with Cobalion EX because he can pull off double colorless energies with Righteous Edge, and Steel Bullet takes care of anything that has like Safeguard or something like that. Heck, you put Muscle Band on this guy, and Steel Bullet can actually just one-shot Pyroar. So, a very useful card as well. Lots of things to search for. We also have Mewtwo EX just because pretty simply, you just dump metal energies on him if all else fails, and he can just blast things with X-Ball. Pretty generic, pretty useful. And our last Pokemon, we run 14, is Keldeo EX. Basically just for his Russian. We're only running 1 because retreating's not as bad as it seems in this deck. And the idea is obviously he can get around Bronzong only being able to power up bench Pokemon. He rushes in, and he can also, of course, cure status and things like that. But he rushes in, you bring that Pokemon back to the bench, you can Metal Links it up, and then you can use Floatstone to free retreat this guy back, and then bring in your whoever you want to attack again. Just a classic old strategy, really. As far as our supporters, we're running 15, 4 Juniper, which is pretty much obligatory by now. We are running 3 Ns. I'm not a big fan of running 4 N. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you've probably realized that by now, but the other nice thing about 3 Ns is in a deck where we can easily be, we're kind of almost aiming to one-shot EXs. We can go through our prizes fairly quickly, and N can be a burdensome supporter mid to late in the game for us sometimes. So, and if we do need him late game, we can easily versus Secret for him and stuff like that. So the missing, only running 3 doesn't hurt us at all. We really do fill our bench quite quickly in this deck, so Colress is kind of obligatory, but I'm loath to run more than one, just because early game it can be quite unappealing. So just the one in this build. We're running 2 Skylas. We got plenty of Skyla targets. Although in a lot of ways, you know, she's really a very early game card in this deck, getting Battle Compressor, Float Stone, Ultra Ball, whatever we need to get our setup. And after that, she matters a lot less, and that's okay. With things like Seismitoad running around, reliance on items is not so great, but we actually have a slightly lighter item lineup. So sometimes you may be using her to go get your stadium or another supporter even, and that's okay. That's okay. She's mainly here just to be an extra copy of everything else in the deck, so that's alright. Speaking of things that are good in the early game, Pokemon Fan Club is another one. We're running 2 of it. This is just to go get, like, say, Bronzor or Keldeo EX, or 2 Bronzors, or, say, a Bronzor and whatever Pokemon you want to attack with. It just depends on what's in your hand, but this makes sure your early game setup is consistent. And anywhere after that, you can actually use Battle Compressor to pull this out of your deck, so it's no longer a bad draw when you don't need it. And that's fine. It makes your Battle Compressor a little more multi-purpose. We just run them so that in the early game it helps us secure that early setup. We do have 1 Teammates. This is a good Versus Seeker target, but our knockouts are probably going to be EXs on us, so we don't want to overdo it on Teammates. Mostly it's going to be an early pitch, and that's no big deal. Just a Versus Seeker target for when the time is right. Lysander, facilitating knockouts on EXs, and he's pretty much standard at 1 in most decks anyhow. Our 15th supporter is 1 copy of Az, or AZ, or however you want to call him. Because once again, this is great. It recovers, prevents your opponent from getting knockouts on your big beefy EXs. And what's really amazing about this guy, of course, is that in a deck like this, the fact that they drop all their energies into the discard pile is actually good for us. It lets us shuffle those energies around. So you can do stuff like AZ or Dialga EX, dump all that back in the discard pile, replay the Dialga EX, put a double colorless energy on him, double Metal Links, and he's ready to go for full Metal Impact again. Completely, fully healed up and set to go on the same turn. Our items, we're only running 17. We have Computer Search. This one's pretty much a no-brainer. Just get whatever you need. But it discards 2 cards, which gets those metal energies into our discard pile quickly to help us set up. To help get those Metal Links going just as soon as possible. We have 3 Ultra Balls for a similar purpose. It can get us our missing things like Keldeo EX and Bronzong and things like that, and that's quite useful for us. But like I say, discarding Metal Energy, one of its primary purposes. Speaking of discarding Metal Energy, we run 2 Battle Compressors. These are for those Metal Energies, but also it can thin your deck out and get rid of things that are no longer meaningful. Like it can get rid of Pokemon Fan Club, like I said before. And the other cool thing is it also combos with Versus Seeker, so if you get the Versus Seeker, you can actually use this to go get the supporter of your choice to retrieve with the Versus Seeker, and then play, which is kind of a cool combo, which makes it not useless late game. And it's also, of course, useful when your opponent, like Lysander Trump cards you or something like that. We got 2 Float Stones, we got a couple of heavy retreats in the deck, but more than anything, this is just to make sure Keldeo has it. We got 2 Muscle Bands. It's kind of a Skyla target, kind of a top deck thing. It's not as important to get these down in this deck as it is in other decks. It can just be kind of nice with Dialga EX, so it's something nice to have around. And Cobalion can put it to use sometimes. We got 2 switches for when retreating is not possible, or if Keldeo's not around. This can help us kind of maintain a little bit of control, so it's nice to have them as targets. We're running 1 Professor's Letter. You can use this obviously to get double metal and then feed them to an Ultra Ball or something like that, so that's quite nice. Also Skyla target. We got 2 Versus Seekers. That's just kind of obvious. And lastly, we're running 2 Steel Shelters. We really don't need more because the effect isn't really necessary for our game plan. This mainly just gets rid of other stadiums from our opponents. Or if we've got status, we can go search this and play it as kind of like a pseudo full heal or something like that. So that's nice. But we don't really need the effect, and a lot of status isn't really running around in the environment right now. So it's not really a big deal. And our energy is pretty straightforward. It's 4 double colorless. This is largely for Dialga EX and Mewtwo EX, but, things like Aegislash can use it in a pinch. So, not bad, not bad. And then we've got 10 Metal Energies. That's all you'll really need. They'll be in the discard pile just coming back endlessly for the most part. And that's fine. And that's the deck. That is Bronzong. This deck took 6th place, which was not shabby at all. Like I said, it just has so many good matchups where you just kind of just won automatically just by getting Aegislash down. So, anyway, that's the deck. I strongly recommend you use it if you want to play competitively. It's a lot of fun. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more Pokemon content.